The prayer before the storm. Zara Amandi knelt beside her bed in the small apartment in Nairobi. Her hands clasped tightly together as she whispered a prayer into the quiet morning air. The golden light of dawn filtered through her window, casting a warm glow across the packed suitcase that sat waiting by the door. Today was the day she would leave everything behind for a humanitarian mission in Saudi Arabia, working with displaced women and children who needed her help. God, if this path is not meant for me, please close this door, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But if this is your will, give me the strength to walk through it. The sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway made her heart sink. Knew those steps, knew the determined stride that belonged to Marcus, the man she had been with for 2 years, the man she had just told she was leaving. The final confrontation, Marcus didn't bother knocking. He used the spare key she had given him months ago, back when their relationship felt like a promise instead of a prison. He stood in her doorway, his tall frame filling the space, his dark eyes scanning the room with barely contained anger. "You're really doing this," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're throwing away everything we've built together for strangers in a foreign country." Zara stood slowly, smoothing down her simple blue dress. "Marcus, we talked about this. This isn't about us. It's about what I'm called to do." "Called to do?" He laughed bitterly, stepping closer. "Since when do you make decisions based on some divine calling?" "You're running away, Zara. Running away from commitment, from responsibility, from me." She could smell his cologne, the same scent that once made her feel safe but now felt suffocating. "I'm not running away. I'm running toward something. Can't you see the difference?" Marcus reached for her hands, his grip firm but not quite painful. "What about our future? What about the life we planned? The house, the children, the family we were going to build?" For a moment, Zara wavered. The life Marcus described was safe, predictable, comfortable. But somewhere deep in her heart, she knew it would never be enough. She had always felt called to something greater, something that would use her gifts to help others who had no voice. "I have to go," she said softly, pulling her hands free. "I have to." The muscle in Marcus's jaw tightened. "If you walk out that door, don't expect me to be here when you come back. Don't expect anything to be the same. The journey begins at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport." Zara's best friend Amara helped her check in, chattering nervously about the adventure ahead. But Zara's mind was elsewhere, still replaying the look of hurt and anger in Marcus's eyes when she walked out of the apartment. "You're making the right choice," Amara said, squeezing her hand. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are." The boarding announcement crackled over the intercom, and Zara gathered her carry-on bag. At the gate, she handed her boarding pass to the agent, who frowned at the computer screen for a moment before smiling and waving her through. "Enjoy your flight," the woman said. As Zara walked down the boarding bridge, she had no idea that a simple computer error had just changed the course of her entire life. The boarding pass in her hand was correct, but the system had directed her to the wrong gate. Instead of boarding a commercial flight to Riyadh, she was about to step onto a private jet belonging to one of the most powerful men in the Middle East. The luxurious trap the moment Zara stepped inside the aircraft. Something was wrong. This wasn't the cramped commercial plane she had expected. Instead, she found herself in a cabin that looked more like a luxury hotel room, with cream leather seats, gold accents, and soft lighting that made everything glow with warmth. Only a handful of passengers were on board, all men in expensive suits who spoke in hushed Arabic. They looked at her with curiosity and something that might have been suspicion. A flight attendant in an elegant uniform approached her. "Miss, may I see your boarding pass?" Zara handed it over, her heart beginning to race. Something was definitely wrong. The attendant studied the pass, then looked at Zara with concern. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be a mistake. This is a private charter flight." "A private flight?" Zara's voice came out as a whisper. "But I'm supposed to be going to Riyadh for a humanitarian mission." Before the attendant could respond, a man in a dark suit approached them. His expression was serious, almost threatening. "Miss, I need you to come with me," he said in accented English. There are some questions that need to be answered. As the plane began to taxi down the runway, Zara realized with growing horror that she was trapped. She was on a flight to an unknown destination, surrounded by strangers, with no way to contact the outside world. Her simple mission of mercy had become something far more dangerous, and she had no idea what awaited her at the end of this journey. The plane lifted off into the African sky, carrying Zara toward a destiny she never could have imagined. In the seat across from her, one of the suited men made a quiet phone call in Arabic, and she caught only one word that made her blood run cold: Sheikh. The Palace of Secrets, the private jet touched down on a runway that seemed to stretch endlessly into the desert horizon. Through the small window, Zara could see nothing but golden sand dunes and the shimmering heat of the Arabian Peninsula. Heart hammered against her ribs as the engines wound down and the cabin door opened, letting in air that felt like stepping into an oven. Two men in traditional white robes waited at the bottom of the stairs, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses. They didn't speak as they escorted her to a black vehicle with tinted windows. Zara tried to ask questions, but they responded only with gestures, guiding her into the back seat where the air conditioning provided blessed relief from the desert heat. The drive through Riyadh was like traveling through a dream. Towering skyscrapers of glass and steel rose from the desert floor, their surfaces reflecting the brilliant sun. Palm trees lined pristine boulevards, and everywhere she looked, she saw a city that balanced ancient traditions with modern luxury. But it was the palace that took her breath away. As their vehicle approached the massive gates, Zara felt as though she was entering a world from the Arabian Nights stories her grandmother used to tell her. The walls were made of pale sandstone that seemed to glow in the afternoon light, and intricate Islamic geometric patterns decorated every surface. The interrogation inside the palace, Zara was led through corridors that felt like walking through a museum. Precious carpets covered marble floors, and crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns on the walls. But despite the beauty surrounding her, she felt like a prisoner being led to her cell. They brought her to a room that was both elegant and intimidating. Behind a massive wooden desk sat a man who radiated power and authority. This had to be the Sheikh she had heard mentioned on the plane. Prince Rashid Al-Mansuri was younger than she had expected, perhaps in his mid-30s, with the kind of presence that made people instinctively lower their voices in his presence. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his traditional white dishdasha was clearly made from the finest materials. But it was his eyes that captured her attention, dark and intelligent, studying her with the intensity of a man accustomed to seeing through lies and deception. "Miss Amandi," he said, his English perfect but colored with a slight accent, "you are very far from home." Zara lifted her chin, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. "Your Highness, there's been a terrible mistake. I was supposed to be on a commercial flight to work with a humanitarian organization." Prince Rashid leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "Indeed, there has been a mistake. The question is whether it was an accident or something more deliberate. I don't understand. You boarded my private aircraft without authorization. You have no diplomatic credentials, no official reason to be in my country. Either you are remarkably unlucky, or you are here for reasons you have not shared with me." The accusation in his voice made Zara's stomach clench with fear. "I can prove who I am. I have documents, references from my work in Kenya. Please, just let me make a phone call." For a long moment, Prince Rashid studied her face as if trying to read the truth written there. Finally, he picked up a phone and spoke briefly in Arabic. In minutes, a man in a business suit entered the room. "Check her story," the prince commanded. "Verify everything. If she is telling the truth, we will arrange for her safe departure." Relief flooded through Zara so suddenly that her knees nearly buckled. "Thank you, Your Highness." But the prince's expression remained cold. "Do not thank me yet, Miss Amandi. If your story does not check out, you will find that my hospitality has limits." The political storm. While Zara waited in a luxurious guest suite, Prince Rashid met with his advisors in his private office. The men gathered around the conference table looked worried, and their voices carried the weight of serious concern. "The rumors have already started," said his chief advisor, an elderly man named Hassan. "Your enemies are saying you have taken a foreign woman prisoner. They are calling you a tyrant who abducts innocent people." Rashid's jaw tightened. He had worked for years to build a reputation as a progressive leader, someone who could modernize his country while respecting its traditions. Now a simple mistake threatened to undo everything. "What do you recommend?" he asked. Another advisor spoke up. "We could quietly return her to Kenya, claim it was all a misunderstanding." "Too late for that," Hassan said, shaking his head. "The story's already spreading on social media. If we simply release her now, it will look like we were hiding something." Rashid stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city he was sworn to protect and serve. The weight of leadership had never felt heavier. "There is one option," Hassan said carefully, "a temporary marriage contract." The room fell silent. Rashid turned slowly, his expression dangerous. "You want me to marry her? If she is your wife, then no one can accuse you of wrongdoing. It would be a short-term arrangement, just long enough for the rumors to die down. Then you could divorce her quietly." The idea was absurd, yet Rashid could see the logic. In their culture, a man's treatment of his wife was considered a private matter. But the thought of marrying a complete stranger, even temporarily, went against everything he believed about the sanctity of marriage. The impossible choice that evening, Prince Rashid came to Zara's suite personally. She was sitting by the window, reading her Bible and trying to find comfort in familiar verses. When he entered, she stood quickly, smoothing down the simple dress she still wore from her journey. "Your story checks out," he said without preamble. "You are indeed who you claim to be." Zara exhaled in relief. "Then I can go home?" "I'm afraid it's not that simple." He moved to stand near the window, his profile silhouetted against the lights of the city. "Your presence here has created a political situation my enemies are using it against me. I don't understand. What does this have to do with me?" Rashid turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I need you to marry me." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "A temporary marriage contract. It's just long enough to silence the rumors and protect both our reputations. After a few months, we would divorce quietly." Zara stared at him in shock. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. It would be a marriage in name only. You would have your own quarters, your own life. I ask only that you play the role of my wife in public." The proposal was so outrageous that Zara almost laughed. Almost. But something in the prince's expression stopped her. He wasn't joking. He was as trapped by this situation as she was. "I have a life in Kenya," she said softly. "People who care about me, where are those people now?" His question was sharp, cutting. "Has anyone tried to find you? Has anyone even noticed you're missing?" The words stung because they were true. Marcus had made it clear he wouldn't wait for her. Her mission organization probably thought she simply hadn't shown up. In the space of 24 hours, she had become completely alone in the world. Zara closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. When she opened them, Prince Rashid was watching her with something that might have been sympathy. "I need time to think," she said. "You have until tomorrow morning," he replied. "After that, I will be forced to find another solution to this problem." As he left her alone with the most impossible decision of her life, Zara sank to her knees beside the bed and prayed harder than she ever had before. Outside her window, the lights of Riyadh twinkled like stars, beautiful and foreign and utterly beyond her reach. The wedding that wasn't the morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the palace as Zara stood before an ornate mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The ivory silk dress she wore was modest yet elegant, its flowing fabric respecting the customs of her temporary new home. Palace attendants had arranged her dark hair in an intricate style, adorned with delicate gold jewelry that caught the light with every movement. But this was no fairy tale wedding. Her hands trembled as she touched the unfamiliar weight of the necklace at her throat. She had spent the entire night in prayer, wrestling with a decision that felt impossible. In the end, it had been a verse from Isaiah that gave her peace. "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." Perhaps this strange path was part of God's plan for her life, Perhaps there was a purpose she couldn't yet see. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A palace attendant entered, her eyes respectfully downcast. "It is time, my lady." The ceremony took place in a small private chamber within the palace. Unlike the grand wedding Zara had dreamed of as a young girl, this was a quiet, formal affair, attended only by the necessary witnesses. Prince Rashid stood waiting for her, dressed in traditional white robes that emphasized his tall frame and commanding presence. As the imam spoke the words in Arabic, Zara felt as though she was watching someone else's life unfold. The prince's responses were measured and formal, his expression giving away nothing of his thoughts. When it came time for her to speak, her voice was barely above a whisper. The moment the ceremony concluded, Prince Rashid turned to her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "This changes nothing between us," he said quietly, his words meant only for her ears. "You are my wife in name only. Do not mistake this arrangement for something it is not." Zara met his gaze steadily, though her heart was pounding. "I never did, Your Highness." The unexpected joy in the days that followed, Zara discovered that palace life had its own rhythm. She was given her own wing of the enormous building, with rooms more luxurious than anything she had ever experienced. But luxury couldn't ease the loneliness that settled over her like a heavy blanket. It was during one of her explorations of the palace that she stumbled upon the most unexpected blessing of her strange new life. She had been wandering through the library, running her fingers along the spines of books in languages she couldn't read, when she heard the sound of children's laughter. Following the sound, she discovered two young boys playing in an alcove, filled with cushions and toys. They couldn't have been more than 6 and 8 years old, with their father's dark hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief. "Who are you?" the older boy asked in perfect English, tilting his head to study her with curiosity rather than fear. "I'm Zara," she said, settling down on one of the cushions. "What are your names?" "I'm Tariq," the older boy said proudly. "And this is my brother Samir. Are you really Baba's wife?" The innocent question made Zara's chest tighten. "Yes, I suppose I am." Samir, who had been hiding shyly behind his brother, stepped forward with a book clutched in his small hands. "Can you read to us? Our teachers are boring." Something warm bloomed in Zara's chest as she took the book from him. It was a collection of adventure stories, beautifully illustrated, with pictures of brave heroes and magical lands. As she began to read, both boys settled beside her, their attention completely captured. From the doorway, Prince Rashid watched the scene with an expression of wonder. His sons had been withdrawn and difficult since their mother's death 2 years ago. No amount of expensive tutors or elaborate toys had been able to reach them. Yet here they were, laughing and engaged with a woman they had just met, the growing thread as the days passed. Zara found herself looking forward to her time with Tariq and Samir. They became her anchor in the strange, new world she had entered. Their innocent joy, a reminder that beauty could be found even in the most unexpected circumstances. But peace was not to last. The rumors about Prince Rashid's mysterious foreign wife continued to spread, growing more sensational with each telling. Some claimed she was a spy sent by Western governments. Others whispered that she was a fortune hunter who had trapped the prince into marriage. The first anonymous message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Zara found it slipped under her door, written in English on expensive paper. "You do not belong here. Leave before it is too late." She tried to dismiss it as the work of some palace gossip, but when a second message appeared the next day, her unease grew. "Your presence brings danger to those you claim to care about." That evening, as she was reading to the boys in their playroom, Prince Rashid appeared in the doorway. His expression was darker than usual, and tension radiated from his tall frame. "Boys, go to your rooms," he said firmly. "I need to speak with Zara." As soon as they were alone, he moved closer, his voice low and urgent. "Someone in the palace is working against us. My security team found evidence that information about you is being leaked to my political enemies." Zara's blood ran cold. "What kind of information? Everything? Your background? The circumstances of our marriage? Even details about your daily activities? Someone has been watching you very closely." The thought made her skin crawl. Who would do such a thing? That's what I intend to find out. His jaw tightened with determination. Until then, I'm assigning additional security to watch over you and the boys. The moment of connection that night, sleep eluded Zara completely. She paced her luxurious rooms, reading verses from her Bible and trying to find peace in prayer. But the anonymous messages had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Someone in this beautiful palace wanted her gone, and they were willing to use threats to achieve their goal. Around midnight, she heard a soft knock at her door. Out. When she opened it, she was surprised to find Prince Rashid standing in the hallway. He had changed from his formal robes into simple dark pants and a white shirt, making him look younger and less intimidating. "I couldn't sleep either," he said simply. "May I come in?" Zara stepped aside, suddenly very aware that she was wearing only a simple nightgown and robe. He moved to the window that overlooked the palace gardens, his hands clasped behind his back. "I owe you an apology," he said, without turning around. "When I asked you to marry me, I thought it would be a simple solution to a political problem. I didn't consider that I might be putting you in real danger. You couldn't have known." Zara said softly, moving to stand beside him at the window. "Couldn't I?" He turned to look at her, and for the first time since she had met him, his carefully controlled mask slipped. "I have enemies, Zara. Powerful men who would use any weakness against me. By making you my wife, even temporarily, I made you a target." Vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This was not the cold, commanding prince she had married, but a man carrying the weight of impossible responsibilities. "Why did you really ask me to marry you?" she asked gently. Prince Rashid was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face in the moonlight. "Because you looked at me like I was just a man, not a prince or a political asset." When was the last time someone did that? The honesty in his words made something shift in Zara's chest. For just a moment, the walls between them seemed to dissolve, and she saw him as he truly was. Not a powerful ruler, but a lonely man trying to do what was right in an impossible situation. "We'll figure this out," she said quietly. "Together." Something flickered in his eyes, an emotion too complex to name. For a heartbeat, Zara thought he might reach for her hand. Instead, he stepped back, the familiar mask sliding back into place. "Get some rest," he said formally.
Ow.
"Tomorrow we begin hunting for whoever is threatening you." As he left her alone once again, Zara touched her fingers to her lips, wondering at the strange warmth that had bloomed in her chest during their conversation. This marriage was supposed to be temporary, a business arrangement that would protect them both. So why did her heart race every time Prince Rashid looked at her with those penetrating dark eyes? Outside her window, the palace gardens stretched into darkness, beautiful and mysterious as the man she had married. And somewhere in those shadows, an enemy waited and watched. Planning their next move in a game, Zara was only beginning to understand. She was sitting in her private garden, tears streaming down her face as she tried to pray, when Rashid found her. He didn't speak at first, simply sat beside her on the marble bench, his presence a solid comfort in her storm of emotions. "Sorry," she whispered. "I've ruined everything for you." "You haven't ruined anything." His voice was gentle, softer than she had ever heard it. "If anything, I've ruined things for you." She looked up at him through her tears, surprised by the pain she saw in his dark eyes. "What do you mean?" "You were trying to follow your faith, to help people who needed you. Instead, you ended up trapped here with me, married to a man you don't love, hated by people who don't even know you." "I don't regret it," she said, and realized she meant it. "These past weeks, getting to know you and the boys, seeing the kind of man you really are. I don't regret any of it." Something shifted in Rashid's expression. Without warning, he reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. The touch was electric, sending shivers through her entire body. "Zara," he said softly, her name, like a prayer on his lips. "Yes. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." She nodded, afraid to breathe. This marriage was supposed to be temporary, a solution to a political problem. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about politics. His hand moved to cup her cheek, and she leaned into his touch instinctively. "I'm falling in love. With you The words hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the risk he was taking by admitting his feelings. Rashid. She began, but he placed a gentle finger against her lips. You don't have to say anything. I know this complicates everything. I know you didn't ask for this, and I have no right to expect anything from you. But Zara was already shaking her head. You don't understand, she whispered. I'm falling in love with you too. The confession seemed to break something open between them. Rashid's eyes darkened with an emotion so intense it took her breath away. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might disappear. But when Zara responded, her arms coming up to circle his neck, he deepened it, pouring all of his carefully controlled emotions into the connection between. Then when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Rashid rested his forehead against hers, his hands tangled in her hair. What do we do now? Zara whispered. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I can't let you go. Not now, not ever. The promise in the darkness, as they sat together in the garden, the palace lights twinkling around them like stars. Zara felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of her situation. This was no longer a temporary arrangement or a marriage of convenience. This was real as the love growing in her heart and the desire she saw reflected in Rashid's eyes. There's something else, Rashid said quietly, his arm around her. Waste, as they watched the fountain in the center of the garden. My investigators found something about the person who's been leaking information about you. Zara tensed. What did they find? The messages you've been receiving, the leaked stories, to the press. They're all coming from someone with access to the palace. Someone close to the royal family. Who? Rashid's jaw tightened. We don't know yet, but whoever it is, they're escalating. The threats are becoming more specific, more personal. Fear crept up Zara's spine. What kind of threats? He pulled her closer, his voice fierce with protectiveness. Nothing is going to happen to you, I promise you that. But we need to be more careful, more vigilant. As if to underscore his words, a shadow moved near the palace wall. Too quick and too deliberate to be a palace guard on routine patrol. Rashid saw it too, his body tensing as he instinctively moved to shield Zara. We should go inside, he said quietly, but as they stood to leave, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that their enemy was closer than they realized, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The love she and Rashid had just acknowledged was beautiful and real, but it had also made them both more vulnerable than ever before. In the shadows of the palace, danger lurked, and their greatest test was yet to come. The morning after their confession in the garden, Zara woke with a lightness in her heart she hadn't felt since arriving in Riyadh, but that joy was short-lived. As she made her way to breakfast, she found the palace buzzing with unusual activity. Guards moved with purpose through the corridors, and staff members whispered among themselves with worried expressions. She found Rashid in his study, surrounded by his security team and advisors. His face was grim as he studied documents spread across his desk. When he looked up and saw her, something flickered in his eyes, relief mixed with concern. We need to talk, he said, dismissing the others with a gesture, privately. Once they were alone, he moved to her side, his hands coming up to frame her face with gentle urgency. How are you feeling this morning? Any regrets about last night? Despite everything, Zara found herself smiling. None whatsoever. Relief flooded his features, and he kissed her softly. Good, because I have news that changes everything. He led her to the sitting area, keeping her hands in his as they settled on the sofa. My investigators found the source of the leaks. Zara's stomach tightened. Who? My cousin, Prince Fahad. He's been working with my political opponents, feeding them information about you in hopes of discrediting me and my claim to certain trade agreements with the West. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Someone in your own family. Family betrayals are not uncommon in royal houses, Rashid said bitterly. But this goes deeper than I initially realized. Fahad didn't just stumble upon information about you, he orchestrated your presence here? Zara stared at him in confusion. What do you mean? Rashid pulled out a file folder and opened it to reveal photographs and documents. The ticket switch at the airport wasn't an accident. Fahad bribed airport personnel to redirect you to my plane. He planned for you to be discovered, for the scandal to emerge, and for me to be forced into a compromising position. The revelation made Zara's head spin. But why would he want to involve an innocent person? Because an innocent person makes the best pawn. If you had been a spy or someone with ulterior motives, it would have been too obvious. But a genuine humanitarian worker, a woman of faith that was perfect for his purposes. Anger flared in Zara's chest. So I was never supposed to be on that humanitarian mission at all? Oh, the mission was real. But Fahad made sure you would never reach it. Rashid's grip on her hands tightened. I'm sorry, Zara, you were used by someone who saw. You as nothing more than a tool to hurt me? The confrontation that afternoon, Prince Fahad was summoned to the palace? Zara watched from a hidden alcove as he entered Rashid's office, his confident swagger suggesting he had no idea his scheme had been uncovered. He was younger than Rashid, with the same dark hair, but softer features and eyes that held a calculating gleam. Cousin, he said with false warmth. I heard there have been some security concerns. I came as soon as I could. How considerate of you, Rashid replied, his voice dangerously quiet. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. From her hiding place, Zara could see the moment Fahad realized something was wrong. His confident expression flickered as he noticed the security guards positioned around the room and the documents on Rashid's desk. The airport employee you bribed has confessed, Rashid said without preamble. The journalist you've been feeding information has turned over your communications. Your web of lies is unraveling, Fahad. Fahad didn't try to deny it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair with a cold smile. You always were too sentimental, Rashid. A true ruler would have simply disposed of the girl and moved on. A true ruler protects the innocent, Rashid countered, his voice hard as steel. You used an innocent woman as a pawn in your political games. You put her life at risk for your own ambition. And look how well it worked out for you. Fahad laughed. You actually fell for her, didn't you? The great Prince Rashid brought low by a simple African girl. The contempt in his voice made Zara's blood boil, but it was Rashid's reaction that surprised her. Instead of anger, he smiled a dangerous expression that made even the guards shift uncomfortably. You're right, he said calmly. I did fall for her, and that's exactly why you've lost. The truth about love before Fahad could respond, Rashid stood and moved to the alcove where Zara was hidden. He extended his hand to her with a gentle smile. Come out, my love. It's time to end this charade. Zara took his hand and stepped into the room, her chin held high, despite the fear coursing through her veins. Fahad's eyes widened in surprise and something that might have been respect. You knew she was there? He asked. I know everything about my wife, Rashid said, his arm coming around Zara's waist in a gesture of protection and claim, including the fact that she never let your manipulations break her spirit. He turned to address the guards. Escort Prince Fahad to his quarters. He will remain under house arrest until I decide what to do with him. As the guards moved to comply, Fahad stood slowly, his expression a mixture of defeat and grudging admiration. You realize this won't end here, don't you? There will always be others who see your foreign wife as a weakness. Let them come, Rashid said firmly. They'll discover that love is not a weakness, it's the greatest strength a man can possess. Real wedding 3 months later, Zara stood once again before a mirror, preparing for a wedding. But this time, everything was different. The dress was her choice's stunning creation that blended African and Arabian influences, symbolizing the union of two cultures, two hearts, two souls. This time, the ceremony would be public, a celebration, witnessed by friends, family, and the people of the kingdom who had come to love their unexpected princess. The woman who had arrived as an accidental bride was about to become a chosen wife. Are you ready? Rashid asked, appearing in the doorway. He looked magnificent in his formal robes, but it was the love in his eyes that took her breath away. I've been ready since the day I met you, she said truthfully. As they walked together, toward the grand hall where hundreds of guests waited. Zara marveled at the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a manipulation by an enemy had become the greatest blessing of her life. The ceremony was everything the first one hadn't been: joyous, meaningful, and filled with genuine love. When Rashid lifted her veil and looked into her eyes, Zara saw their future stretched out before them, a life of service to their people, of raising Tariq and Samir together, of building something beautiful from the ashes of a scheme meant to destroy them. "I love you," he whispered against her lips before kissing her, sealing their union before God and witnesses. "And I love you," she whispered back, her heart full to overflowing, forever and always. As they stood on the palace balcony that evening, waving to the crowds who had gathered to celebrate their marriage, Zara thought about the prayer she had whispered that first morning in Nairobi: "God, if this path is not meant for me, please close this door." Instead, he had opened a door she never could have imagined, one that led not just to love, but to purpose, family, and a future beyond her wildest dreams. "Any regrets?" Rashid asked, his arms around her as they watched fireworks light up the desert sky. Zara leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. In the distance, she could hear Tariq and Samir laughing as they watched the celebration from their own balcony. Tomorrow, she would officially adopt them as her sons, giving them the mother's love they had been missing. "None," she said firmly. "Not a single one." The woman who had boarded the wrong plane as Zara Amande, humanitarian worker, had found her true calling as Princess Zara Al-Mansuri, beloved wife and mother. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories began with the most impossible circumstances. And sometimes what looked like a mistake was actually destiny, wearing a disguise. As the fireworks painted the sky in brilliant colors, Rashid whispered in her ear, "Welcome home, my love." And for the first time since this incredible journey began, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The end.